Hi and welcome back to another fine art review, and today we're looking at another landscape of it's E.T. Compton, Edward Theodore Compton, who is, I guess, American but Swiss, and let's just jump right into it. This is the painting right here. Whew, to me it's incredible. This is this is the first impression. Purple. Um, is what I'm getting, and I mean the lighting is incredible. I love both E.T. Compton and E.H. Compton, father and son. I forget who is who, but this is an oil painting by Theodore, and it's interesting because I mean looking at this, I immediately the impression that I get is this is a fantastic painting. It really, really is. I love the language of the mountain. It's clear in this. The Swiss people have throughout history been an alpine people for sure, and I think it's clear that both father and son Compton were that. Um, Technically speaking, I'm not 100% sure that this is what I'd prefer in a landscape painting. You know, to me it is seemingly repetitive and I don't know, uneducated in many ways. But that is that is my opinion. This is really analyzing the brushstrokes. Maybe it's just a problem with the brushstrokes that I have. It's not my cup of tea. Everything is quite soft, round, and clear. Same type of texture, same type of brush strokes everywhere, slightly repetitive. Yet, with that being said, the edge sharpness and things like... Okay, so much to look at this painting. I'm just jumping straight into it impulsively. I'm 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 getting used to the painting. I have to look at it for a while in order to... I mean, the lighting is incredible, and like I said, the edge sharpness, with the fact that the brushstrokes are so rounded and repetitive in the general shapes and stuff like that. There's no repetition, and the edges are insane because a lot of people who paint mountains tend to go really soft. I mean, if we're looking at like painters today who are still learning, people who aren't considered masters or whatever. But yeah, so if I'm looking at the technique of this, it's my opinion that if you compare Compton to someone like Sargent is far more superior in terms of how advanced that technique is, the execution of the paintings, and the understanding, I think, of light and color and form. The fast approach that Sargent had as well, I think, is something that shows the immense understanding for technique that he carried in him. And I don't think that that's the same in Compton, but this isn't like a video to compare the two, I guess. But so if this scene was painted by Sargent, I probably would have preferred it. But then again, if you do compare them, I'm assuming that Sargent had a lot more fame and person in him of everything, drama and people around him. If you're turning towards an alpinist painter living in the Swiss Alps or the Swiss mountains, it's gonna be a lot more pureness to it. There's no stress in this painting whatsoever. It's an incredibly advanced scene to have these type of rocks in the foreground and snow at the same time, all these small type of rocks, and the changes that occurs in the shadows and the light. I mean, you have this mid ground here going to the mountains. You have the very distant mountains with the snow on top of it, the clouds, and the moon appearing. You know, there's no rushing this painting, and I think it's clear when you're looking at it. Compton has taken a lot of time to paint this, analyzed it a lot. But if you're living in nature, there's no. Or if you're living in the mountains, you have a different personality than you do in a big city. And still, you're looking at Compton's both father and son's drawings. It's clear that they have a beauty in their brushstroke. They're understanding this as something beautiful, but with it they see the hard, rugged surfaces and the almost spidery type of or the mountainous type of danger that comes with it, because these are high peaks, and in winter conditions, and I mean even worse probably in spring conditions, these are dangerous places to be in. And I think they both had respect and an understanding of that, and I think it shows in their paintings, to be honest. But yeah, it's incredible. I mean, look at this. This is it's very theoretical, you know. You're seeing these like bluish purple types of shadows, these these warmer type of orange, pinkish, beige kind of sunlit areas in the mountains, and you have a more blue and less value in the mountains that come next, and then you have the snow lit or the sunlit snow on top of the very distant mountains, and like there's barely a difference between color and and value between the mountain and the sky. So like the theory of it is just perfectly executed. There's more blue in the shadows, and even in here you have blue in the shadows. You see the clear light and shadow differences here. I mean, there's no you have the blue in the shadows here. It's like it really describes this rock is absolutely perfect in my opinion. Same with this. So the amount of detail that Compton gets into his surfaces and into the light, I think is incredible. I absolutely love it. I'm not a huge fan of the clouds. I think they could have been painted in a different way. But then again, I think maybe what my problem is with this painting is the brushstrokes, and it's completely my own opinion. It's not that someone has a bad or good brushstrokes at this level of painting. I mean, it shows incredible dedication to be up in those mountains and painting. I think that's what mainly attracts me to it. But technically speaking, like look at these brushstrokes. The amount of information here is, well, it's very suggestive, and it's so subtle. The changes between the colors and the temperatures and the values, even, they're really subtle, but they do the job perfectly. So there's no question actually about, I'll take that back when I compare, like technically speaking, Sargent might be superior than either of the Comptons, but it's just a different way of using technique. I think this is fantastic. A lot of use of brown in the painting, something that I'm not necessarily always a fan of in the landscape. I love that there's some birds here as well. Wonder what kind of birds there are, or if there weren't any birds at all, it just painted them. But then again, like, it's so simple, and it's just like so, it's so pure. Like, I think the birds, they describe perfectly what's happening. One is closer, then the further they get, the smaller and smaller they get. It helps to describe what's happening from this down towards that. This mountain is far off, and the birds in front of that also helps to create that space in between this rock and here, because the space and shape here, that can be difficult to describe. The distance that you're actually talking about, because when you're talking distance in mountains, you're talking about extreme distances. I saw another painting that Theodore did, and from a hut. So I'm assuming that they spend a lot of times in different types of huts, and a majority, I think, also was painted from indoors through windows or something like that. And also a lot, both father and son Compton painted a lot of watercolors as well, and they're really nice. But technically speaking, I know very little about watercolors, so maybe that's for another time. Yeah, but this is incredible. I'm particularly fascinated with the rocks here. That's incredible. The light that's happening here, the tight shadow that's really dark here, but then like the loose and open shadow that has a lot of reflected light into it here, and then you still have the accents of the rock sort of having these layers to it, or edges sticking out with the really dark indications there. It's just so well executed, it's kind of ridiculous. People underestimate, I think, how difficult it is to paint rocks, both distance and in close range, especially if it's front lit. You need a cloudy day, I think, in order to sort of describe clouds happening over the scene, but I mean, this is just sort of side lit, I guess. Kinda half front lit, half side lit, and it's just perfectly described, I think. Yeah, it's crazy. Looking up close also, yeah, this is nice. Again with, I mean, it feels like, I don't know if it's the photo, but it feels like maybe here there's some parts that are a bit thinner, but otherwise that's something that is like the texture is the same everywhere, except for in the snow, which has very little texture. And that's also a very nice concept and idea, because snow is so smooth a lot of times. I mean, especially in comparison to rocks. It's nice that Theodore sort of used that to his advantage, and made sure that the snow appeared softer than the rocks in terms of texture. Very smooth looking, and it's very little dirty. He kept it clean, which is super important when you're painting snow. And so obviously you can tell that Theodore knew exactly what he was doing. No doubt about it. Even more so when it's painted, I think, at an elevation of probably a couple of 1,000 meters over sea level. Very cool, very cool. Yeah. The colors are they're so simple, they're so like pure. It's not any extreme or any like impulsive play in it, much like you have with Soren, for example. And I think that's what makes this a very particular type of landscape painting. I love it. Anyways, I think that's it for this one. Thanks for checking in and taking part of the video. And again, any painters, any paintings that you think would be worth analyzing or having a look at and talk about. Mostly this is opinionated, I guess, so I just love looking at paintings. The visual aspect has always been the main focus for me when it comes to painting. Also, if you have like any art historian facts or whatever, feel free to share it, because I'm very uneducated on that topic, so it'd be nice to learn a little bit about that as well. Yeah. The more and more I try to separate myself from the painting, the more I'm drawn back to it. It is really nice, but I also long for going into the mountains, so maybe it's time. Either way, thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.